All right, dominant chords. We're going to talk all about dominant chords. There's three ways you can play a dominant chord. It can either be functioning, non-functioning, or static. Static is exactly what it sounds like. It doesn't move. You just have a one chord vamp, and it's just a 1, 7. That's a static E7, and you can jam over that. You can play, E Mixolydian. You can play the blues. You can play the major blues. You can do whatever you want with that. There's so many options, but that's a static dominant chord. There really isn't too much else to say about a static dominant chord. What we want to talk about is functioning versus non-functioning. Functioning means it resolves. If it's a 5 chord, right, because that's what a dominant 7 is, it's a 5 chord. If it resolves, it's functioning. So it either resolves up a 4th or down a 5th. So if you're on E7, it either goes up to A something or down to A something, right? Now it can resolve to any minor chord, any major chord, or any other dominant chord. It all works. So for example, if we do in the key of C, if we play a C, E7, F7, G7, C. Only G7 is functioning because it's the only one that resolves that tritone thing between the 3rd and the flat 7th. All the other ones are not functioning because they don't resolve up a 4th or down a 5th. Doesn't mean they're not extremely cool sounds. If we put a little rhythm to this progression, it's a very cool thing, right? But the E7 and the F7, they're not static, and they're also not functioning. Only the G7 is functioning. What about a secondary dominant? You've probably heard this before. A secondary dominant is when it's functioning, but it's not resolving to the tonic or to the root. So for example, let's say I have a D7 to a G7 to a C, right? Now, the D7, when it goes to G something, whether it's G minor, G major, G7, it is functioning because that's resolving. But G isn't our key center. C is. So D7 is what's called a secondary dominant, and G7 is our main dominant. Now, when we write secondary dominants on our progression sheet, when we analyze them, it's called 5 because it's a 5 chord, and then it's of / whatever the root is of the note you're going to. So if we're going from a D to a G and are in the key of C, since G is 5 in C, this would be 5 of 5 of 1. So D7 would be 5 of 5. That's what you call that. You call that 5 of 5. It's the 5 of the 5 chord. G7 is just 5/7, and C is just 1. Now, like I said before, you can resolve to other chords than just the dominant chord. You can resolve to a minor chord. So let's say I did A7, D minor, G7, and C. So A7, D minor, G7, C. Very common sound, right? But A7 is resolving to a 2 chord, right? That 2 minor chords. So this would be 5 of 2 minor, 5/7, 1. That is secondary dominance. So what I want you to do is I want you to post a video playing a progression where you're using dominant chords where they're not just 5 chords. So play, make up the progression using secondary dominance, and then try to solo over it. And again, I know I haven't given you too many options about what scales to use over what chords. You can use Mixolydian, and I've told you can use blues, over all this kind of stuff. So see what you come up with. I'm very excited to see it, and good luck with your secondary dominance.